What's up, everybody? Kevin Allen here, aka the Geek, and we are live breaking down the Halloween NFL Showdown Massacre, is what I'm calling it, between the San Francisco 49ers and the Arizona Cardinals. Let's take a look at this game, guys. What's up, everyone? Good to see you all here. I love your questions. I love your comments. Keep them coming. Halloween. Massacres happen on Halloween, and that's what we're about to see tonight as the 49ers bring their top-ranked defense to town. Now, when we say top-ranked, it's important to actually know what the hell's going on with this defense because most people don't. Most people just, top-ranked. Oh, great. But actually, the 49ers in particular have been spectacular against the quarterback position and against the pass. They're number one overall DVOA, first in yards allowed per pass. So they are not allowing opposing teams to throw at all, guys. On the flip side, their defense versus the run hasn't been as spectacular. 11th in yards per carry, middling DVOA. So you might be thinking, hey, let's attack these guys with the run. That's the best way to go after them. Maybe that's so. And if you have Nick Chubb on your team or somebody like that, that could work. But unfortunately, the Cardinals don't have any running backs on the roster. So we don't even need to worry about that. They're going to have to throw, and they're going to be basically diving right into the strength of this spectacular 49ers defense. So the Dubs is asking about five. Yes, this is an onslaught. What does that mean? What does that mean? We are expecting to have a destruction of the Cardinals tonight. Okay, the Vegas odds makers have put this one. They're giving the 49ers a 26.5 point game team projection, with the Cardinals coming in at 16.5. And I have to say, the 16.5 for the Cardinals, that for me seems high. That's high, right? How are they going to score 16.5 points in this game? How are they going to move the football? Again, they don't have a running back on the roster. And by don't have a running back, are there some bodies on the Cardinals right now? I guess. I mean, David Johnson's hurt. I'm not buying that he's playing for a second. Not for a second. So now you're down to Kenyon Drake, who they traded for this week, who is not up to speed in the offense. He just got there. You're talking about Zach Zenner and Alfred Morris. The fucking Alfred Morris is the worst case scenario. And Zenner, they're basically the same guy. Slow, plotting, the worst type of player to go up against a tough defense like the 49ers. There will have no success in my mind. So the only guy who even has a chance is Kenyon Drake, and Kenyon Drake just got here a couple days ago. Just got here. So these, what I have up on the screen are Josh, DFS Up North's Showdown breakdown notes. Okay? You could see he's being a little bit kind, wants to spread it out a little bit. This is the FanDuel single game notes. I'm going to give you my take, which is going to slightly differ. But for the most part, I agree with most of these plays. But there's one spot that we're going to differ in, and the biggest mystery for tonight's game is what's going on with the rest of the 49ers rushing attack. Now, oh man, I should have had this ready. Let me see if I can get my... Here we go. Before we do any of that, let's take a look at Statsational's power rankings, because again, when you're trying to figure out what's going to happen with a game, this chart, it's on DFS Army's Beat the Bookie, NFL Power Rankings tab. So you click on Beat the Bookie, NFL Power Rankings, you get to the Power Rankings. DFS Army VIPs have access to this. You don't just have to be a Beat the Bookie sports handicapping subscriber. You can get this just when you're a DFS Army VIP, because this information is not just handicapping for sports betting purposes. It's also really, really important just for fantasy. I use it all the time. It's one of the most important tools that I personally use when I'm coming up with which teams I want to target and which players on particular teams we should go heavy on. So take a look at this. The expected rushing yards for San Francisco here, 193. And note that what I said about DVOA shows up here in the numbers. So in case you just didn't read it, but you're just kind of checking out the numbers, you could see you can't, these are passing yards for, okay? And what you're seeing here is you can't pass on the San Francisco defense. Now, does that mean that will continue every single game the whole season? No, but this is what's been happening. So this is what we know. It's been virtually impossible to pass on these guys. What does that tell us about Kyler Murray? It tells us Kyler Murray, not the best play. What about the pass catchers? Not the best play for the Cardinals. Not the best. Not the best. But the running game for San Francisco is the best play. They're expecting 193 rushing yards. That's the most on the slate, by the way. Look at every other game. I mean, there's not one that compares. There's a close one, Minnesota, but we'll talk about that later in the week. Not much compares here. 193 yards on the ground for San Francisco. A not horrible 104-yard projection for Arizona, but that assumes they do what they've been doing, that their running game is healthy. I'm going to lower this number and my expectations because they don't have any running backs on the roster. Kyler Murray can get some rushing yards, but, for the most part, don't expect a whole lot there. So now, what do we do with this information? How do we make it relevant to our lineups? Well, if the Cardinals aren't going to rush for many, or they're not going to pass for very many yards, and the rushing game should do even worse because they don't have any running backs that are with the team for any amount of time outside of Kenyon Drake, and he's a sleeper, especially on Draftkings. He's a little bit of a sleeper, a little sleepy. But for the most part, we're going to be looking at the running game for the Cardinals. Now, here's the challenge. Matt Breida and Raheem Mostert are both questionable to play. It's not clear if either one will play tonight. So we need to not just understand. Obviously, from what you just saw, it's clear as day that Tevin Coleman is the top play on the slate. You see how this number says 40 to 45% exposure? I'm going to give you what my exposure to Tevin Coleman will be. 100%. So, he's a core play. Great. I will have him, if it's not 100%, it's 90%. And you see how he's about 40, 50% here, 50 to 60%. Like, if you're making one lineup today, put fucking Coleman in the MVP. If you're making 5 lineups, put him in 4 out of the 5. I would have him in 4 out of my 5. And then you could do one. Then you could do one without him. Now, Steve is saying Breida and Mostert are active, but, they're not active because the game is many hours away. We'll see if they play tonight. We'll see if they're active. We don't know. If they play, then, each one of them is interesting, but it's going to have to be it makes it much more difficult for us to figure this out today, quite honestly, if they play, because who's going to get the looks? Those guys are questionable. Do they get hurt again? Breida, ankle. Why are you going to play him in a smash game? There are so many mysteries. I really hope that those two guys don't play, because then we're going to have to guess about things that are unknowable. Right? It's a good question. We're going to try to figure that out, the Dubs. We're going to try to figure out who the Arizona player is. But getting back to this running back situation, because this is going to be things that everybody's going to be thinking about later today. Unfortunately, here at 1 o'clock, without knowing who's going to play, we don't know. We already know we want running backs for San Francisco. That's what we know. We want running backs. But beyond that, which running back? All we know is Tevin Coleman is healthy. He's probably going to get the most carries. But when this game turns into a blowout, we've seen this San Francisco team very quickly. They like to pull that running back, that starter, and put in whoever the turd is. Now, if that's Jeff Wilson Jr., if Jeff Wilson Jr. is active, which I think he will be either way because those other guys are questionable at best and they're coming off of injuries and whatever. Great. I think somebody asked about maybe it's Kenyon Drake who's the piece from Arizona. I don't know. But, if Wilson Jr. is in your lineup, he's so cheap that you could do whatever you want. He's 5K. At this point, you don't need any great players. I mean, Zach Zenner at 10-5, really? Really? Come on. Kenyon Drake at 11-5. I mean, FanDuel's doing their best here, guys. But essentially, the players are free today. You can pick whatever guy you want. So, the core build is going to start. Let's take a look at a core build here. Okay, we're going to start with Tevin Coleman at MVP. Now, when I say a core build, for those of you who don't know what the fuck you're doing, this is the core build. I mean, core, it means this is where you want to start most of your lineups, right? You're going to have... How am I starting my lineup? Well, Tevin Coleman, we know he's going to be the best of the running backs. We know that this team is supposed to get 190 yards on the ground, according to our projection model. We know that Tevin Coleman gets all of the red zone touches, or most of them, certainly while he's in the game, or until they, it's such a blowout that they swap in Mostert or Wilson Jr. or whoever the game finisher is in blowouts. But in your core build, Coleman is the highest floor, the highest ceiling, the highest everything play on the slate. Next up is going to be Garoppolo. Now, do I love Garoppolo? No. Is he a great quarterback? No. Has he put up numbers all season? No, but he's still a quarterback. He's going to have the highest floor. He's facing an Arizona defense that's not good. So they'll be able to throw on them if they want to. Arizona's allowing the most points per game to opposing quarterbacks. So, yeah, if I'm building a cash lineup, you will have this. If you're not starting your sort of core build like this, you're already fucked up. You already ruined it. The Dub's asking, yes, 100% lock. Let's say, yes, pretty much. On Draftkings, when we talk about Draftkings, we're talking FanDuel right now, buddy. When we talk about Draftkings, we'll be very high on San Francisco defense as a captain play and as a flex almost lock. All right, so who else are the high floor plays in this game? You might think Kyler Murray. I say nay. You don't put the kicker in, Steve, because we want kickers from teams that are favored. So I don't think that that's the best way. I'm thinking maybe Kenyon Drake, but we'll figure that part out. We want George Kittle in there. He's the best of the pass catchers for Arizona, for San Francisco. And again, we're loading up on San Francisco. Now, for the purpose of this build, I'm going to assume that those other two injured players are out. Okay? I'm assuming here that Breida and Mostert will not play. That brings Wilson into my core build. These are 3 of the 4. I've got 12K left to mess with. Who do I put in? Well, I've got to put a guy in from the Cardinals. So at this point, we're going to choose between... I mean, I wish I could tell you there's a lock answer here. You want to put in Zane Gonzalez? Hell no. Not only is he in a terrible spot as a kicker, he sucked this year. Like, I normally don't give a shit about kickers, but, like, this guy misses a lot of kicks. Or he had that one game where he missed the 2. But also, his team's going to be playing from behind. Like, actually, he's had good scores the last few weeks, so this does make me interested in that sense. But the problem is, these were games where the Cardinals were in it, I would say, for the most part. I'm trying to think at New Orleans if they were in that game. It might be Zane. I don't really think he's going to have a lot of success, though. Yeah, so we're hearing again, probably playing. This is going to ruin the slate for us, James. Like, this makes it really difficult because if these 2 guys play, and we don't know how much they're going to play, you're going to have to choose 1 or 2 of them. So that's going to require a lot more digging. We're not going to know. They could be active but not get much playing time. Burrito, we've seen come in. Hooli Fresh. What up, Hooli? Burrito, we've seen come in, and he was questionable and all of that, and then he plays a lot of snaps. Same thing. We've seen weird shit where you're like, why the fuck would they play these guys who have ankle injuries in a blowout? And yet, there they are. Yes, Steve, we are getting some confirmation here. But still, they're not active until they're active. So the coach says probably. Let's wait and see what happens. We know this coach to be, well, actually, the Arizona coach is the liar, not the 49ers. We don't know what the 49ers coach's deal is. All right, so we need to choose a last spot. Now, again, if those other guys are active, we're going to pull Wilson, and we might have to go with a Breida, or we might have to go with a Mostert. Yeah, tough to know. DNP, limited practice, DNP, limited practice, tender ankle, may be available on Thursday, etc. So let's say we have to play this guy. Okay, so who's left? And this is basically how you're going to choose your player. I mean, the Arizona player, you might have to do that, or you go with a Mostert, take a shot with Wilson anyway. So that's really going to be it. You're going to have to figure out which one guy from Arizona. And if it's Larry Fitzgerald, okay. Marley's got a KOTB tiebreaker. How many people in that tiebreaker with you, my man? Riley, what you're saying here makes sense in terms of why would they play Breida in a short week with an ankle in a blowout, but weird shit happens in football games, okay? And coaches do things that make no sense all the time. I see it all the time. It's not a wise move to try to kind of like apply general logic to some of these situations because coaches just do weird shit. And you're like, oh, what the fuck? That's weird. Now, remember, all we're looking for out of our player, we're going to play on. DK comes next, Scott. Man, we're not done. We just start with Fanduel because it's easier. So all we're trying to do with this last player in the lineup is just get one guy in here who fits to make it work. We're forced to play a player from Arizona. I think the highest floor on Arizona is either going to be, Kyler Murray himself, although on a points per dollar basis, not very good. But he probably has the highest floor because he's the quarterback. So no matter how good your opposing team is, usually the quarterback's pretty good. So if you have endless money to spend and you're trying to avoid a zero, that's one way to go. Kenyon Drake is probably the second highest floor, and that's really weird. But I mean, what other running back is going to do anything in this one? It's really a bummer, like I said, that if Breida and Mostert are kind of active, and it just muddies up the whole situation. We have to see then if Jeff Wilson Jr. is active. And if all four of them are active, we're really kind of fucked. So at that point, good luck. But my goal would be to play Coleman, Garoppolo, Kittle, and the next best running back for San Francisco, and then bring it back with whoever you can afford from Arizona to make the lineup work. So unfortunately, I can't assume who that's going to be. But again, if I was using Jeff Wilson Jr. as my backup, then I can go all the way up. I can get Kenyon Drake in there, and we can finish it off just like that. Now, why do I choose Kenyon Drake over anybody else? It's really just a matter of they're probably going to scheme some targets to him. You know what I'm saying? They're probably going to scheme a few targets to Breida. They don't have anybody else at running back. And, this is an Arizona team that likes to throw to the running back position. Drake is a pass-catching running back. I think it's a problem because, how many plays could he have learned in like 3 days? So it's really challenging as far as that goes. You could use Christian Kirk. He's been fine. He seems like he's healthy now. He'll catch a couple passes. But again, we're talking about a defense that's very, very good against the pass. Now, the way Arizona spreads the football around, it's going to be hard for anyone to cover everybody, but Christian Kirk is far and away the best wide receiver to target on this Cardinals team. I assume that's a question about Bird. The answer is no. Antoine is going to fade Coleman because he's the most popular play on the slate and the highest likelihood to score the most points and be the prime captain. Now, if you're trying to win a tournament, and I'm just going to speak to this strategy. If you're trying to win a tournament, there's always some merit to fading someone who's going to be 70, 80, 90% owned, right? And what's the merit? What if that person fails? 90% of the field is wiped out. So when you're going up against 100,000 entries and you want to kind of separate yourself, you say, you know what? This guy's going to be 90% owned. He's the best play on the slate by far. There isn't even a close second or third. But everybody else is going to know that, and they're all going to load up on this dude. So what if I just don't play him? And then what if he fails? What if he, doesn't do much? What if the San Francisco defense scores a bunch of touchdowns, and then they're up so much they rest Coleman, they put in some backup? What if he gets hurt on the first play of the game? What are the chances of that happening? What's the probability that Tevin Coleman gets injured in the first play? 5%? Or in the first quarter of the game? 5%? Let's say there's a 5% probability that this guy gets hurt in the first quarter. And let's give him an 8 to 10% probability that he gets hurt in game. That seems a little high, but realistically, players get hurt. Running backs get hurt in game, one game a year. So I don't think 10% is out of control. Let's say we had that. So shouldn't you leave 10% of your lineups without that player just in case, built for that scenario? Because it could happen. Now, some people will say, well, I'm going to fade Tevin Coleman every time. If a player is going to be 70% owned, I'm just going to fade him every time. And when you're doing that, that's a game theory approach. That's not a terrible one, but you have to understand what you're doing in that situation. You're saying, I believe that there's a 20% probability or a 15% probability that this guy has a shitty game. Won't be in the nuts lineup at all. Not even as a flex play. So then you say, all right, I'm going to fade him completely because I understand that 80% of the time when I do that, I'm going to lose all of my money. But for the 20% of the time that I'm right, or the 15% of the time that I'm right, I'm going to give myself a spectacular chance, not just to win this tournament and win 1,000x my money, but probably to do so with very few to no ties. So whatever the reason is that you think in a situation like this, the probability is less than, let's say, 70 or 80% that this guy will produce a big game. And yes, one of the things I talked about at the top of the Players Club VIP DFS Army exclusive podcast, I think it was last week, was probabilities, and how we as players don't fully comprehend probabilities. Like, what is the probability of Tevin Coleman not being the highest scorer on the slate? And Antoine mentioned, well, he's still in a committee. Everybody's assuming that because those other two guys are questionable, that, they'll just feed Coleman in this game, which is the most likely thing that will happen. Why are you going to bring out the questionable bulky ankle guy and the other questionable, fucked up knees guy in a game that's a blowout? Why wouldn't you just leave the healthy guy in there, or maybe bring in Wilson to back him up and let the other two guys rest it out? We don't need you today. Rest your hurt. Rest your injuries. We're playing the Cardinals. We're not playing a good team. We're favored by 10. We got this, right? So the most likely scenario, though, but is it possible, for example, when you talk about why wouldn't you play him at MVP in every single lineup 100%? Because we've seen it time and time again that a backup running back or some other player might come in and actually score 2 touchdowns to a Coleman's 1 and could outscore him, for example. So in a game where it's going to be an offensive rushing game onslaught, there are scenarios in existence where the backup running back, especially if there's just one of them, comes in and actually has the bigger game. We saw it a few weeks ago when we were all over Jamal Williams. Now, it lucked out a little bit, but it was a showdown where everybody was, not this last week, but the one before it. The last time the Packers, not this most recent time the Packers played on primetime, but the one before, we were all over Jamal Williams, and he ended up getting all the touchdowns. It was the one where Aaron Jones dropped an easy touchdown pass and then had a fumble. And so, things shifted over to Jamal Williams. And so, again, we talked a little bit about this fade because Antoine brought it up here in the chat, but the reality is play fucking Tevin Coleman as your MVP. Okay? Again, I'm showing you on the screen here a core build. This build assumes that Breida and Mostert will not play or will be limited or essentially won't get any snaps. And I think we'll know more about that if we see Jeff Wilson Jr. active for the game. Can't know right now. It's 1 o'clock. Christian Kirk is the best of the pass catchers for Arizona. Therefore, he makes the core build only because I can afford it with Jeff Wilson here. Again, if I have to change it up, I got to change it up. The other players that I really like in any sort of a cash build, the main one would be Robbie Gould. He should have a great game here. It's a smash spot for Arizona. So if I had to go like this and just use some fucking turd from Arizona, how about a tight end? Has he done anything? He gets a couple targets a week. That could work too. I don't like putting a tight end in there, but this would just be hey, we don't know. This is another approach anyway. Just throwing in, if I need to punt the last play from Arizona, maybe the tight end is the guy. Because there's really no one else in Arizona down here that's getting any looks. I mean, Dante Pettis is pretty cheap. He's still out there. It's Pettis, Goodwin, and Emmanuel Sanders right now. You could see here all of these pass catchers for San Francisco. They're just shit. They're all crap plays. So I think Pettis is the best one. He's still at least getting snaps. Bourne isn't out there very much. He doesn't get many targets now. 1 target last week. Goodwin, he gets a few targets every week also, but this is just a very, very bad matchup for him. And of course, where's Manny Sanders is also playable. I'm sorry, Manny Sanders is on San Francisco. Manny Sanders is playable for San Francisco, though, but he's not in Arizona. Yeah, it's a no to Kyler Murray. What possible reason would I be excited to play Kyler Murray against the number 1 defense versus QBs and pass catchers, right? So we want to put players in the MVP spot that are going to score a lot of fantasy points or that are expected to. Is it possible that Kyler Murray has a good game? Yes. So you put him in there like 5% to 10% of your lineups just in case some crazy shit happens. And, he can run for points. But it's highly unlikely he's the highest scorer on the slate. So, it's a 5 to 10% like super prayer if you're a person that wants to hedge a lot of lineups. Like, let's say you're making 150. You know what I'm saying? That's not what I would do if I was making 5. If I'm making 5, I'm trying to cash all 5. Or, I'm not trying to win a tournament with 5 lineups. Like, yeah, I'm going to put my best lineup. If it happens to win, it wins. But I'm trying to cash those. Yeah, Jimmy G is another story. The Cardinals give up a ton of points to opposing QBs. So the contrarian approach could actually be to play Jimmy G and some of the pass catchers for San Francisco in a surprise, hey, we threw a lot more than you expected game. What we have seen in NFL games is where we all think it's going to be run game, and that's what this one projects, all run. That's what San Francisco's been doing all season, all run. But we have seen scenarios where shit goes weird. Just like, I'll give a great example. Last week, the Steelers game, where, it did work out. I came on this show and I said, hey, Just use Connor at the MVP. Don't get Q. What the fuck are you doing? Right? Now, I don't know. A lot of people still didn't do that. Okay. But I said, just use Connor here because he's going to be the highest used. He gets hurt. And I said, and use the backup running back because this is going to be a running game onslaught for the Steelers. Now, it should have been, except they came out, they played a little bad, they throw 2 interceptions. Miami goes up 14-0 quickly in the first, 5 minutes of the game, and all of a sudden this, we can just lean on the run and just smash these guys thing goes away because they had to throw a little bit, they had to come back, get the 14 points back, so you got a little bit of passing game. So some freaky shit can happen. An interception, that the San Francisco offense is not particularly efficient. Garoppolo hasn't been great. He can get sacked a lot. He can get strip sack, fumble, recovery, defensive touchdown for the Cardinals. So anyway, that's possible. So the contrarian approach I might use would be a little more passing game heavy for the 49ers rather than any sort of approach where I'm loading up on players from the Cardinals. There's no scenario where I want to load up on Cardinals players in this game. Okay, so I know I've spent a lot of time. I can't even believe we're 30 minutes in, but I've spent a lot of time pushing that point home because I want to explain and understand the difference between why you're doing these plays. The core build is what it is. You're going to put Coleman, you put Garoppolo in there, probably George Kittle, and then fill out these last 2 spots. One 49er, one Cardinal. And the 49er will be very dependent on the running back situation, which hopefully we'll get more clarity on as we get closer to game time. If I'm setting up the domination station optimizer for this, watch closely. If I'm setting this up, first thing we always do with the domination station is we control our MVPs. So I tab over to the MVP tab, right? And I'm going to go over to exposure minimum and tell the tool how much exposure I want to each player in the MVP. So let's say I would go 10% Garoppolo. Let's say I'm going to go 60% Tevin Coleman. I'll go, I don't know, fuck this guy. I'll go 5% George Kittle. I'm going to assume here that Jeff Wilson Jr. will be the full guy. So whoever the backup running back, let's say he's the guy. I might go 10 or 15% backup running back. And if it's Mostert and if it's Breida, whoever it has to be. Don't know. Breida's the number 2 guy. So let's say I went 10% that guy, right? If he was starting. I don't know. 15%. We're going to count it up. I don't even know if Jeff Wilson Jr. is going to play. Now, in my Jimmy G lineups, I want to make sure that if the quarterback is the MVP, then I want no less than 2 of guys who will catch passes from him. That's Kittle. That's Sanders. Maybe Breida. Maybe Pettis. Goodwin. So every time I put Garoppolo at the helm, I'm going to want 2 of these guys in there. Why? Now again, on FanDuel, because we're going to have... It's just so unlikely, right? But, that's part of the reason I included Breida in here. And again, if there was another pass-catching running back, I'd include them too, because you want to load up on these running backs as well. And FanDuel only allows you 5 spots. So in all of these lineups, it will be Garoppolo, probably Coleman. He'll be in every lineup, right? And then, or most lineups. And then Sanders Breida, or Sanders Pettis, or Sanders Goodwin, and some player from the Cardinals. So we take a look at the lineups that are being generated. Here's a Garoppolo lineup. That's a Garoppolo, Pettis, Kittle, Coleman, Kirk approach. Most of the lineups, look, we set this up. So we got our 60% Coleman, we got 10%, 10%, 10%, and 10%. Now, when you run 100 lineups, it looks even better. Trusting the projections for the most part. But you'll see every Garoppolo lineup, We're going to get Pettis. We'll get one or two potential pass catchers. Probably going to get Coleman. He should be in all the lineups based on his projection alone. It's funny. They're giving Kittle a similar projection to Coleman. And that's the other thing. So at MVP, though, if you want to be different, again, you don't have to do 60%. You can do 50% Coleman, get a little more Garoppolo, get a little more Kittle, a little more Breida, however you want to differentiate yourself. It's not impossible for Murray to score 2 touchdowns. Could happen, but he's going to have to use his legs. He's going to have to throw for touchdowns. He hasn't done it all year. He has no running backs on the team. So I don't know how you're going to get San Francisco to sort of play up for the run. There's a lot of things working against Kyler Murray here. He's young. He throws interceptions. He's going to be under pressure. You don't generally want a young quarterback against the top-notch defense, but I think the worst part going for him is there's really no running game. It's going to be inconsistent. So he's going to have to throw a lot, and that's asking for trouble. All right. Let's take a look at DraftKings real quick. And obviously, DraftKings with the salary becomes a little more difficult, but actually, they foolishly didn't raise up Coleman very much. And again, if you can use Wilson, then you can afford whatever you want. So we don't know yet what's going to be with the running back situation. We don't know. But if I'm building a core build, I think that 49ers defense has to be in that core build. 49ers defense is definitely a captain candidate as well and could be better. So I'll have a ton of that. Let's see what Josh has going for DraftKings. I see he did not use. This is DraftKings. Yeah, Josh is not a big fan of using defense in the captain spot. I strongly disagree with that. So I will absolutely have lots and lots of San Francisco defense as one of my captains this week. It's been working, so why not keep doing it? They should smash. If they're not in there, they certainly belong here. So, I have 9K left. It's amazing. You could do whatever you want. Now you're forced to use one of these turds. Pretty easy lineup. Coleman, Wilson Jr., assuming he plays, and is the backup. 49ers defense, Kittle, Garoppolo, Kirk. Notice the overlap between the core on both sides. It doesn't matter. Coleman, 49ers defense, Kittle, Garoppolo. These are your core plays. Christian Kirk, if you need to, we are forced to play some players from Arizona. So Kirk is one of them. Kenyon Drake is one of them. I know Kenyon Drake is going to get a few pass catches. So, he could be played. Now, let's say Wilson isn't the guy, and we have to go to Breida. Now we've got to find a punt here, and I don't mind Cardinals defense as a punt on DraftKings. Antoine has some contrarian takes. Maybe Murray can scramble for a touchdown. Maybe he can. That's very true. What if the 49ers RBs all eat from each other and none of them have a tournament winning score? It's not out of the realm of possibility. This is football. It's high variance. Anything can happen. So the first thing we look at is what's the most likely thing to happen. And then we can look at, all right, offshoots. And here's one of your offshoots, Cardinals defense. You might think, well, what the fuck are we using Cardinals defense for? The 49ers are going to smash here. And yes, they probably will. Yes, they probably will. And Cardinals defense has not been good at all. But the 49ers offense isn't the most efficient offense in the world. They could throw an interception. And again, no one's going to play these guys because the same reason that you don't really want to play them is the same reason other people won't. They're like, well, this is a smash spot. So there is a propensity, or it's not uncommon for a defense going against the captain, that wins 17% of the time. That's been the nuts. So it's a great way to have a unique lineup. Again, you can go to Clay here in a lineup like this and just punt it and get a 0. I don't like doing that. So what I'll do in this scenario is, let's say I need to play Breida, Kittle, Garoppolo. I'll sacrifice one of these to, get up a little bit off of this shitty ass play. Like I probably want Gould in here, and then from there I can go, Sanders or some other way without Garoppolo. Garoppolo is rarely, so on DraftKings for me, I rarely feel the need to play the quarterback, even though that does win a lot. It's a higher floor cash type of play, whereas in tournaments you can avoid it. Do I have? Oh no, of course I don't have a 49er in here. So I need to get one. I need to get one guy from the Cardinals in here. Again, I think that might be either Drake or Christian Kirk. These are the two guys I'm interested in. So at that point, if I've got that going on, I'll just go Robbie Gould to finish it off. So I could choose between, in a lineup using this approach, I can choose between Kirk or Drake. And again, I can now make a choice to go up from Kittle to Garoppolo. These are how you build out multiple lineups. Let me show you how I do it. It's hard because I don't want to lock in lineups right now, not knowing about Jeff Wilson. So, but normally I actually make the line. But let's say I hit enter, right? I reload this lineup. Now I said, all right, I entered one with Drake in there. Let me do one with Kirk. Okay, enter, right? Now I'm going to switch it up again. Now I'm going to go, okay, you know what? Now let's go Garoppolo in there, and let's put Kirk back in there and kind of do this approach. All right, let's go Garoppolo and Manny Sanders. That kind of thing. Then I might go, all right, let me do one where I have 49ers as the captain, and then I can do whatever the hell I want. Look, with 49ers captain, I can go Breida, Kittle, Garoppolo, Sanders. Of course, I keep forgetting I need a Cardinal in here, which is unfortunate, but now I have to make a decision which of these guys do I want to sacrifice for a Cardinal. Can't have all players from where the fuck is Coleman? Yeah, so let me get Coleman back in there. Get George Kittle. Christian Kirk. Done. Hit enter. So that's how you build off of your core. Sanders, very playable too. Anytime we have a pass catcher on DraftKings that's going to get some looks, he's absolutely in play because he can do his thing. So if it's very easy for pass catchers to outscore running backs and quarterbacks on DraftKings, it just is. So yeah, you could throw Sanders in here or Kittle. That's who we're going to be cycling through. Here's a Sanders one. If I got Sanders in there, I can get 49er defense in there. And again, I got a Cardinals player. Again, I want to keep switching off who the Cardinals player is. I go to here. I go to these three guys: Kirk, Fitzgerald. Here, if I can squeeze Kyler Murray in there, cool. Okay, everything becomes easier if Jeff Wilson Jr. is in the lineup. Sanders is normally a slot player, Huli. So I don't think that you have to worry too much about him being on Sanders. I don't know why you love Deebo Samuel. He hasn't been any more targeted than any of these other guys, but yeah, Samuel's probably just as good of a play as Goodwin, or I think Pettis has kind of gotten the least targets recently, but I mean, got three last week. He's out there still a little bit, so can't really trust any of these pass catchers from the 49ers. They just spread it around. But yes, for snap counts, it will be probably Goodwin, Sanders, with mixing in Deebo Samuel a little bit more than what we see of Pettis mixed in. It'll probably be a little more Samuel than Pettis in terms of overall snaps. I really think, again, that Kenyon Drake might be the wild card here, because they're definitely going to scheme some plays to Kenyon Drake. And again, Sanders, we got him in a couple lineups. Get him out. Put Kittle up there. So this is how you're going to scroll through and make lineups to attack multi-entry. Keep hitting it and then scrolling back. But you always want to start with the most likely stud in the captain spot. And because Coleman is cheap enough, he's going to wind up being the most likely stud to be the guy. Tristan saying 5% Drake. I'll probably have a little more than that just because they all suck. The whole Cardinals team, no one projects well. You put Kyler Murray in this lineup here. Okay. But this whole Cardinals team is really bad. If I had to pick the highest floor Cardinal, it's going to be Kyler Murray. So how do I fit him in there? Well, here it is. Coleman. You just leave off Garoppolo. You can leave off Sanders. Now, let's remember one thing, very, very important. This is the Cardinals. George Kittle. Cardinals is a cheat code against quality tight ends. So we absolutely want George Kittle exposure. He's your best pass catcher for San Francisco by far. A, he's the most targeted pass catcher on San Francisco anyway. But B, here you go. But B, this is the Arizona cheat code against tight ends. Kenny Graham's going to put a kicker. Oh, Kirk. Kirk is captain. Christian, I thought it was a kicker. Kenny G. Kicker, Kirk. And then the rest 49ers. Yeah, do that. You never know. You never know. I want to get cute. That's cute. George Kittle, 10 to 15%. Kyler Murray. This is just not how I would play. I wouldn't have any Kyler Murray at, for me, I won't have any Kyler Murray at captain. I don't see it. So on DraftKings, I mean, maybe 5%. That's not the way I would go. I like the Kirk play better, but I'd have a little more Kittle. I'd have, 40, 50% here, 20 to 35, and then backup running back, whoever that might be. Dr. 2K Green, man, go to dfsarmy.com. If you sing up for the site, you can use my code Geek and you get 20% off. Go to dfsarmy.com, man. Guys in the comment section, man. Throw Dr. 2K Green a link. Get in there. Get in there. So let's take a quick look over at SuperDraft projections. We love SuperDraft. SuperDraft is awesome. SuperDraft is the best. Blah, blah, blah. DFS Army subs, we've been crushing it over there. So let's take a quick look over at these projections. Who do we want to play? Who to locks? It's going to be Jeff Wilson Jr. It's going to be whoever the running back is. Obviously Tevin Coleman, not a big thing, but he's going to be your top play. George Kittle, even without the massive multiplier, we're going to want to load up on him. Matt Breida, if he's in there, is playable. Christian Kirk, we already talked about, low floor. Zane Gonzalez is the kicker for Arizona. We want kickers on teams that are favored. I'd rather have Robbie Gould at 3.55. He's pretty much a lock to make my lineup. If Jeff Wilson Jr. is going to be the guy, if he's going to be the guy, and we have to take some shots as if he will, then he should well exceed the 2.6 fantasy point projection. That number would go up to like 8 or 9, and at 3.75, he'd be one of the best plays on the slate as well. If he scores a touchdown, forget about it. I'm going to ignore all of this, all of this. We don't want any of this crap. So on SuperDraft, Kyler Murray at 1.5 is a joke. He's not gonna be in a great he's not gonna be in a great spot here. Kyler Murray, I benched him in my 2QB league. I just don't see him doing more than 12 fantasy points, even in a great game. I mean, it could happen, could be totally wrong, but that's how I'm playing it. I think his floor is very, very low. I don't think the ceiling is super high, but you can play, and 1.5 multiplier, that don't work for me. I'd rather have Garoppolo. I'd rather have Coleman. I'd rather have Kittle. Again, this is the Arizona cheat. Marley. Marley, in case you missed it, it's good to play tight ends against the Cardinals. They are ranked worst in the league versus the position. So that doesn't always work. Like when the tight end who's going up against them isn't a high volume tight end. So if it's a Tyler Eifert, maybe we don't have to load up on it. But when they go up against a tight end we already like, and now it's a particularly good defensive matchup, put him in your lineup. We want that. We want some of that. Give me some of that George Kittle. Little George. Tristan, man, we love you. Thank you for signing up. And I'm glad you're enjoying the service. I hope you guys play basketball, fantasy NBA as well, because you will see some incredible things during this NBA season. I could not play it without being in our team Slack, getting the breaking news. Last night, for example, Nerlens Noel starting, like big, bold letters come out. Same thing with Rashawn Holmes starting. Bench Dedmon, get Holmes in. The guy fucking crushes. I don't know how people play without. I play a lot of money. Like I play a couple thousand every night. I don't know shit about basketball. I haven't watched a basketball game since the Knicks had Latrell Sprewell and Allen Houston doing their thing. But I've already won thousands of dollars this NBA season just following the cores, using the Dom station, and living in the breaking news channel. Yeah, Keg is fucking awesome. You are correct, Scott. And between his cores and notes, I mean, I could show you my results. I literally only use our tools. And I live in the breaking news channel. The times I fucked up is when I go to dinner. I leave. I'm like, I'm good. You know? And then I come back. I'm like, oh, shit. I missed the news flash. Damn, that cost me a lot of money. But for the most part, play some basketball too, guys. All right. Any other questions regarding this slate? Seeing a note. Last night I won the turbo. I was in the turbo NBA. I just used the Dom station, a little bit of the notes, just rolled out 20 lineups in the two uniques. It was I think it was a 2-game slate or something. I came in second and fourth, like seventh. Yeah. I'm like, what the fuck are these? I didn't even do anything. I spent 10 minutes on it. It was crazy. I spent 50, 60 hours a week researching NFL, and like NBA, I come on and use the Dom notes, spend like 5 minutes, take first place. It's mind-boggling. So yeah, let's call it a breakdown, guys. Good luck tonight. I will be back in Slack. The big thing to monitor is going to be the running back situation. We have to pay close attention. We have to kind of believe the coach, but not believe him so much. It may make it untenable. We're going to have to see. We really are going to need clarity on who the other running backs are going to be. And if it's going to, and if these guys are starting, we're just going to have to like mix them all in and hope that we get it right. And it's going to be the same issue that everybody else is having who's playing. We're not going to know. Other people aren't going to know either. They're going to be active. We're going to wait for a blurb from the coach. We're going to have to figure that part out. We don't know yet. So that's the one thing I want everybody to hold off on. But in the meantime, jump on the Dom, start getting your lineups made. This is definitely a nice contest to mass multi-enter. I think it's very winnable. I think the paths to MVP, for example, are pretty slim. So we can really narrow that down. And whenever I can narrow down my MVP choices and my captain choices, I feel better about it, because the fewer variables we have to deal with, the better our chances of hitting the nuts lineup. Now, you might also say, well, that also increases the likelihood of ties. I don't give a fuck. I just want to win. If it's ties, it's tie. If he ties, he ties. That's it. All right, guys. Good luck tonight.